Karen awoke to the sensation of something wet and rough licking her face. Her eyes snapped open, a strangled scream dying in her throat as she locked eyes with a massive, slobbering Doberman. Its teeth were bared in what she perceived as a menacing grin, its hot breath making her gag. Terror, raw and primal, flooded her veins. This wasn't how she'd pictured waking up on her nature retreat. Scrambling backward, she frantically scanned her surroundings. The quaint, floral-patterned tent she'd carefully erected the previous evening seemed to mock her. Beyond it, two more sets of predatory eyes glowed in the early morning light. One belonged to a hulking Rottweiler, muscles coiling beneath its sleek coat as it watched her every move. The other, a German shepherd, paced restlessly, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Memories of the previous day flooded back. The indignation at finding the public park closed for maintenance, her righteous anger at the inconvenience, the arrogant satisfaction of choosing a prime spot on a clearly marked private property. It had seemed almost symbolic, reclaiming nature from the clutches of bureaucracy. She was Karen, after all, and rules didn't apply to her. Panic clawed at her throat. The Doberman inched closer, its tail wagging, a gesture that seemed anything but friendly in her terrified state. Her hand darted instinctively to grab her phone, needing to document this outrage, to call for help. But the pocket where she always kept it was empty. Where was it? Then, the horrifying realization struck her. She'd left it in her car, parked on the other side of the creek. The same creek she hadn't been able to cross due to the unexpected rainfall. Trapped, surrounded by guard dogs, and completely alone. Her gaze darted wildly, searching for any sign of the property owner, praying for a savior. But there was nothing, only the menacing silence of the woods and the predatory gazes of the dogs. The Doberman chose that moment to nudge her hand with its wet nose, the gesture sending a fresh wave of terror through her. This had been a terrible, terrible mistake. Tears welled up in Karen's eyes, blurring her vision. This couldn't be happening. She was Karen. People respected her, feared her even. They didn't threaten her with slobbering canines. She tried to project an air of authority, squaring her shoulders and lifting her chin. Down, she commanded, her voice a shaky squeak. The Doberman, unimpressed, simply lowered its head and nudged her hand again, its hot breath tickling her skin. She flinched, repressing a sob. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Where was the owner? Surely they should be rushing out at any moment, horrified by their guard dog's aggression. Then she heard it. A twig snapping in the distance. Footsteps crunching on dried leaves. Hope surged through her like a jolt of electricity. "Help!" she cried out, her voice cracking with desperation. "Someone, please help me. These vicious dogs are attacking." The foliage rustled, and a figure emerged from the trees. But instead of the burly woodsman she'd pictured, a young woman, no older than 30, walked into the clearing, her face breaking into a wide, disarming grin. In her hand, she held a well-worn leash, its other end secured to the collar of a fluffy, tail-wagging golden retriever. "Good morning," the woman chirped, her voice friendly and unconcerned. "Sorry about the commotion, fellas. Didn't realize we had a visitor." Her gaze settled on Karen, still cowering in the tent, the three large dogs forming a semicircle around her. The woman's smile widened, revealing a set of purely white teeth. "Well now," she drawled, "don't you look comfortable?" Karen's fear momentarily gave way to indignation. Comfortable? Surrounded by guard dogs? This woman was either blind or delusional. Before Karen could launch into a tirade, however, the golden retriever, sensing her distress, decided to offer comfort. It bounded towards her, letting out an excited bark. Karen shrieked, scrambling backwards until her back hit the far wall of the tent. This was a nightmare. The woman threw back her head and laughed, the sound echoing through the clearing. Karen felt a surge of anger replace the terror. Was she being mocked? This was outrageous. Down, Buttercup, the woman finally managed, her voice still tinged with amusement. The golden retriever, chastised, lowered its head and slunk back to its owner, though it still cast anxious glances at the trembling Karen. Now, the woman said, taking a step closer, her voice losing its jovial tone. Care to explain what you're doing on my property? Karen drew herself up, her indignation mounting. Property? This is a public park. I have every right to be here. She gestured vaguely at the surrounding woods, hoping her confident tone made up for her lack of actual knowledge. The woman raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smirk. Oh, honey, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. You've got a lot to learn. She reached into her pocket and retrieved a small metal sign, holding it up for Karen to see. On it, in clear, bold letters, were the words, **** private property. No trespassing. ***. Karen stared at the sign, her face burning with shame. She vaguely remembered seeing it now, half hidden by overgrown weeds at the edge of the woods. She'd been too busy fuming about the closed park, too caught up in her own sense of injustice, to pay attention. Seeing her defeat, the woman's expression softened slightly. Look, she said, clipping the leash onto the Doberman's collar and gesturing for the other two dogs to follow. Just pack up your things and I'll pretend this never happened. Consider it a lucky escape. She paused, her eyes twinkling with something that looked suspiciously like mischief. My boys aren't always so welcoming to unexpected guests. Karen, despite her humiliation, felt a surge of defiance. Lucky escape, she sputtered, scrambling out of the tent. I'll have you know I could have been seriously hurt. Those beasts surrounded me. I demand you control your animals. She pointed an accusing finger at the dogs, now sitting patiently beside their owner. The woman crossed her arms, her expression hardening. They were doing their job, she stated calmly, protecting their home from intruders, which is more than I can say for you. Karen fumed. The nerve of this woman. She was the victim here. Intruders. She shrieked, her voice reaching a new octave. This is a public park. I have every right to be here. She knew she was on shaky ground, but she couldn't bring herself to back down now. Not with this peasant. The woman sighed, running a hand through her hair. Honey, I hate to break it to you, but your definition of public needs some work, she said, her voice laced with weary amusement. Now, I suggest you pack up your things and leave. I'm feeling generous today, but I can't vouch for my boy's patience. She turned to go, the three dogs falling into step beside her, their earlier menace replaced by a calm obedience that only served to infuriate Karen further. This wasn't over. She would not be dismissed like some common trespasser. She deserved an apology, and compensation for her emotional distress. Spotting her discarded phone lying near the remains of her campfire, Karen lunged for it, a new plan forming in her mind. This woman might have won this round, but Karen was not one to accept defeat. She would make her pay. She would find out who she was, report this attack, and make sure the whole world knew of this outrageous injustice. Clutching the phone, Karen punched in the emergency number, a triumphant gleam in her eye. This was far from over. 911. What's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. I need to report an animal attack, Karen declared, her voice trembling with manufactured distress. She glanced back at the woman, now a receding figure in the distance, the dogs trotting calmly beside her. I was nearly mauled by a pack of vicious dogs. Okay, ma'am. Calm down, the dispatcher said patiently. Can you tell me your location? Karen froze. She had no idea where she was. She'd been so caught up in her righteous indignation at the closed park, she hadn't paid any attention to the route. I'm in the woods, she stammered, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. There was a sign. Private property. I didn't see it. The dispatcher sighed audibly. Karen could practically hear the eye roll. "Ma'am, do you know the name of the property owner? A street address? Any nearby landmarks?" Karen squeezed her eyes shut, willing an answer to appear. She had nothing. The woman hadn't even introduced herself. All Karen had to go on was the vague memory of a rustic-looking mailbox she'd passed on the way in, the name barely visible through a tangle of ivy. "Willow? Something," she mumbled. "Willow Creek Farm." "Willow Creek Farm," the dispatcher repeated, her tone skeptical. "Okay, ma'am, we'll see what we can find. But I have to tell you, if you were trespassing." Karen didn't wait for the dispatcher to finish. She hung up, her chest tight with a fresh wave of panic. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to be the victim here. But the dispatcher's lack of sympathy, the way she'd said trespassing, made Karen feel strangely guilty. For the first time, she began to question her own actions. Maybe she had been in the wrong. But that realization was quickly overshadowed by a new, more pressing concern. Her stomach growled, a painful reminder that she hadn't eaten since the previous day. And with the sun now high in the sky, she was acutely aware of the miles that stretched between her and her car, her comfortable home, her well-stocked pantry. She was lost, hungry, and starting to feel very, very sorry for herself. Tears of frustration welled in Karen's eyes. This wasn't fair. Why was this happening to her asterisk? She was the one who deserved sympathy, not that woman with her impeccably trained dogs and smug demeanor. A new wave of determination washed over her. She wasn't helpless. She would find her way back to the road, to civilization, and then, that woman would regret underestimating Karen. Stuffing her phone back into her pocket, Karen surveyed her surroundings with a new clarity. The woods, which had seemed so idyllic the day before, now felt oppressive, the trees closing in like prison bars. The air hung heavy with the smell of damp earth and something faintly unpleasant, like rotting leaves. She started walking, choosing her direction at random, hoping desperately to stumble upon a familiar landmark. But the woods seemed to stretch on forever, an endless maze of identical trees and tangled undergrowth. The sun, now directly overhead, beat down on her, making her head spin. Her stomach growled ominously, adding a symphony of discomfort to her already miserable state. Just when she was about to give in to despair, she spotted it, a faint glimmer of light through the trees. Hope surged through her weary limbs. With renewed energy, she pushed forward, branches snagging at her clothes, until she broke free of the woods, blinking in the sudden brightness. She'd have stumbled upon a clearing, smaller than the one where she'd camped, but infinitely more welcoming. And in the center, a sight that made her heart sing. A well-worn picnic table, complete with benches. But it was the object sitting on top of the table that truly made her knees go weak with relief. It was a cooler, a bright blue one with a dented lid, and if her memory served her right, it contained sandwiches. Karen's mouth watered at the memory of the roast beef and mustard on rye she'd packed, her hunger overriding any lingering reservations about stealing a stranger's lunch. She was practically faint with starvation, she reasoned, and desperate times called for desperate measures. Besides, after the ordeal she'd been through, she deserved a little treat. As she got closer, she noticed other items scattered on the picnic table. A red checkered blanket, a dog's chew toy, and a familiar-looking metal water bowl. The same bowl she'd seen outside the tent earlier that morning. Her heart sank. This wasn't just some abandoned picnic spot. This was her asterisk spot. The woman with the dogs, the woman she was going to report to the authorities, was clearly expecting company. Karen hesitated, her hand hovering over the cooler lid. Part of her, the part that still clung to a shred of dignity, urged her to turn back. But the other part, the part ruled by her growling stomach and a strange sense of karmic justice, urged her onward. Taking a deep breath, Karen flipped open the cooler. The aroma of freshly baked cookies hit her first, followed by the tang of pickles and, yes, the unmistakable scent of roast beef. She reached for a sandwich, her fingers trembling with a mixture of hunger and guilt. Well, well, well. The voice, cool and laced with amusement, cut through the quiet clearing like a shard of ice. Karen froze, her hand halfway to her mouth. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The scent of lavender and something supply woodsy, like cedar and pine, had preceded the woman's arrival. Slowly, Karen turned to face her accuser, her face burning with shame. The woman stood there, arms crossed, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. Behind her, 3 pairs of eyes watched Karen with varying degrees of curiosity and amusement. Even the golden retriever seemed to be in on the joke. "Seems you found my lunch," the woman said, her voice deceptively sweet. Karen wanted to apologize, to explain, to vanish into thin air. Instead, she mumbled, I was just leaving," her voice cracking with a pathetic lack of conviction. The half-eaten sandwich trembled in her hand. The woman's smirk widened. "Leaving?" she echoed, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Without accepting my apology." Karen's head snapped up. Apology. The word came out a surprised squeak. "For the misunderstanding, of course," the woman said, stepping forward and gesturing to the picnic table. "Please sit. Join us. My husband should be back from the main house any minute. He's quite the grill master, you know, if you're willing to stay for lunch." Confused, but also deeply relieved, Karen slowly lowered herself onto the picnic bench. The woman, her demeanor now radiating warmth rather than icy judgment, unpacked the cooler, pulling out a veritable feast of sandwiches, salads, and homemade lemonade. As they ate, the woman, who finally introduced herself as Sarah, explained that she understood misunderstandings happened. The public park, it turned out, shared a border with her property, and people often got confused. She'd long given up on fighting it, choosing instead to see these encounters as opportunities for impromptu picnics and a good laugh. Karen, her initial anger replaced with a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude, listened intently, her perception of the situation shifting with each bite of potato salad and sip of lemonade. Maybe, she thought, just maybe, this was a chance for her to shift her own perspective, to be less quick to judge, more open to understanding. And so, Karen, the self-proclaimed defender of justice, spent the rest of the afternoon laughing with the woman she had, just hours before, considered her nemesis. They talked about their lives, their families, and even the perils of navigating HOA regulations. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, Karen felt a strange sense of connection to this woman and this place. As Karen finally stood to leave, her stomach full and her spirit surprisingly light, Sarah surprised her with a parting gift. A jar of homemade jam, made with berries picked fresh from the woods. For next time, Sarah winked, her eyes twinkling. Just make sure to call ahead. Karen returned to her car, the jar of jam a tangible reminder of a day that had started with fear and ended with unexpected friendship. It was, she had to admit, the most exciting picnic she'd ever been to. And as she drove away, the image of the 3 dogs watching her from the edge of the woods brought a smile to her face instead of a shiver of fear.